Hogstye.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Hogstye. It is I, Alex. We got Steve, we got Dave. Guys, we are getting closer and closer to the draft, of course, which is going to be a big story, but we got some interesting stuff to talk about. There's some breaking news today about Jeff Bezos not buying the team. We're going to get into that first. Also going to talk about the whole YouTube thing. YouTubeTV
Generally speaking, or YouTube specifically?
Yes, just generally speaking, YouTube.
Let's talk about YouTube.
Yeah. It's this fun new thing, YouTube.
Let's talk about the YouTube algorithm that feeds you.
We now have a friend on YouTube. The NFL is going to be broadcasting their stuff on YouTube just like we do. So we're equals now with the whole league. That's what I'm arguing.
Guess, yeah. Although I don't know if anybody even knows we're on YouTube. You know, we don't ever talk about it. We don't advertise it.
We have subscribers.
Remember to subscribe. What's it? Comment and subscribe.
Yeah, comment and subscribe. Don't do what our commenters do in our blog. Like actually comment on the thing, please, because.
Well, if they actually were able to see our faces and stuff like that, which I understand why we don't do that, but if they were actually able to see us interacting, you would get a lot more probably on YouTube.
You
would listening through Spotify and everything else.
But Steve would have to put a blur face on or something.
Or something. I would. Yeah. But in terms of our commenters, those guys have gone through a bunch of. It's always politics, and they always run people out, and nobody understands why. We've gone through a bunch of liberal wackadoodles, and now we've gone through a bunch of ultra right-wing wackadoodles, and they run each other off, and we ban a couple here and there.
It's a weird turf war. It's the world's saddest internet turf war.
It is true. The world's saddest internet turf war.
All right. So speaking of internet turf wars, let's talk about Jeff Bezos. Because the breaking news today, and at first it came from a site I'd never heard of, Dave. I think you saw it there too, puck.com or what?
Yeah, puck.com.
I
didn't even look at the sites with it. Yeah, I don't know much about them either.
Yeah, but they broke it somehow that Jeff Bezos has officially said he's not putting in an offer on the Commanders, which I think surprised some people. That, because obviously the NFL had been making a push for him to buy this team or the Seahawks. He really wants the Seahawks, is what everyone's realizing. He doesn't want the Commanders.
Some of us knew that months ago.
Sure. I mean, deductive reasoning helps.
Yeah, a little common sense.
Yeah. But now it's official. He's out. So we're down to two guys, Harris and Steve.
I'm glad you tried that.
Yeah. I think it's Papapopoulos or something.
If I have it written,
I still can't say the name, even though I wrote the column.
Yeah. It's a lot of copy pasting when you write.
Let's just call him Steve A. Steve-O.
Steve A.
Steve-O is better. I like Steve-O. Let's call him Steve-O.
Steve-O. I feel like isn't that a carny? What's his?
Yeah, catch up. It's the guy from the show Jackass.
That's right, Jackass.
Yeah. No, okay, but in all seriousness, look, I don't know why the Washington fan base is so hot on Bezos, except it's the name of a billionaire they recognize.
Right.
But it was obvious months ago this was never going to happen. The big supposed headquarters that was going to be in Virginia isn't happening, and it's the same degree. He's from Seattle. The Seattle Seahawks are about to be sold. The Amazon world headquarters is in Seattle. Mm-hmm. It never made any sense. He never acted all that interested. It was all of this was the Dan Snyder side trying to drum up bidding, a bidding war out of nowhere. That's what it was and is and always was.
It got really sad, I don't know, maybe a week and a half ago when Dan Snyder's cronies were feeding in the media. Oh, come on, Steve, just Jeff, just pop up another 50, 100 billion or so and it's yours.
100 billion? That's
or
a lot.
million, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Suddenly the leaks went from he'll never sell to Jeff Bezos to if Bezos just gives him 250 million more, he'll give him a piggyback ride.
Just make him pay me 100 million more.
Right. So yeah, it was getting sad. Honestly,
it's always been sad.
It's always been sad. Everything with Dan Snyder is sad.
Well, even the sale of a team is sad. He can't do
Yeah.
anything right. It's like
Right.
even when you're selling one of the most sure thing investments in the world,
Right.
and you've priced yourself out of. See, this is basic economics. If anybody's taken Econ 101, you know, or knows anything about capitalism and the free market economy, and some of you commies out there don't. But if you do, you know that if you price something too high, demand will go down.
Right.
And so if demand is down, you have to lower the price to increase demand. This is a basic concept that Danny does not seem to understand.
No, well, you got to remember he is a college dropout for a reason. You know?
Yeah, and he's a business failure, so you know, in all manner of things. So perhaps he doesn't understand this.
Maybe I mean he got lucky with his flim flam that made him all his money, and then he's just screwed up ever since. So
basically, he's screwed upwards. So is the problem.
Yeah. Well, it's not screwed. It's not screwed down. It's screwed up.
I mean, Dave, I think you're on the right track. You've always been on the right track with this of the realistic pool of bidders. Besides myself, I mean, I'm the most realistic. Yeah. But besides that, Josh Harris is the guy who has experience in sports. Has he won titles? No. But what is it? Who else out there has won titles who wants to buy an NFL team? Zero people, as you said in your column a couple weeks ago. Right. And nobody knows anything about Steve-O. Who the heck is he? I have no idea whether he's good, bad, or otherwise. I mean, that was this week's column from Dave, and we know a little bit about like his business history, but I don't know anything about him. So, I mean, Harris is the guy who at least is a competent team owner, franchise owner who's gotten 2 franchises at least pointed in the right direction.
And I know you would say, Steve, it doesn't matter about the minority owners, but at least from the appearance, the minority owners are also competent people,
Well, yeah, I mean,
Rails and Magic Johnson as
I
just
don't know
a
much
PR
about
person.
Rails, then people are, talking about him. Magic is clearly a quality businessman.
Right.
I know Rails. He was more on the art side. He funded an art museum, I believe, right there. It wasn't in DC, was it?
No, it is. He has his own private one that he funded out in the burbs, but he's on the board of the National Gallery.
Right.
And he's a big local financial mogul. That's for sure.
But, and from what I understand, he's done a lot in terms of taking businesses that were kind of on the downside and help, whether through investments or whatever, kind of get them back on the right path, and especially with image and PR and so forth. I mean, the actual Harris Group itself, I think, has got so many small components that really tie together real nicely. But just on Harris alone, I mean, he's still young in the Sixers and Devils ownership, and right now the Devils are probably the second best team in the NHL, one of the youngest. I think like the third, fourth youngest team in the league, right? And they're one of the hot teams coming in for the next 10 years. They're going to be competing in the playoffs. They could just nail down a goalie. They're going to win some championships along the way because that's the most important pitcher in the game.
I mean, the minority-owned partners make zero difference whatsoever. It utterly doesn't matter. It's kind of like who's the campaign manager. Nobody cares, and it's not going to matter whatsoever.
I do, but I'm also a wonk. So
yeah, it may be bad example for Alex Zese's purposes, but point is, it makes no difference whatsoever. I told you guys before that when Magic Johnson owns like 0.00001% of the Dodgers. And the only thing he did good was when Frank McCourt was leaving town, and Frank McCourt was just as much of a disaster as Dan Snyder, believe it or not, maybe worse. And Magic was kind of the public face of the new ownership when they were in the purchasing process. The hero in LA, $1 million smile, all of that. And so he could hypothetically do that for 5 minutes, and then he'll disappear and we'll never hear from him again.
Right.
And the same with this Rails guy, whoever he is. Same thing.
Yeah. You'll see him in the press box or in the owner's box from time to time. That's probably it.
It's mainly they're there because they have money and the guy needs some capital. That's why their minority partners are there.
Yep. So speaking of the capital aspect, there was a interesting story I threw your way just before the show that I'd read in Front Office Sports about how interest rates which Steve, you would probably know the exact number. It's what, 8.5% right now?
8 right now.
It's flat, a flat 8.
Yeah.
How that actually impacts the sale of the team, because obviously, other than Jeff Bezos, no one's going to have the money to do this outright. They are going to have to get loans. Even I assume a guy like Bezos would get loans.
Even Bezos. See, what I think I'd like people to understand about this is that somebody who says his net worth is, for example, $5 billion, does not have $5 billion sitting in a bank somewhere.
There's not a pile of Scrooge McDuck gold anywhere.
There is not.
Yeah,
it's
a big vault they go swimming their money in. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's wrapped up in corporate assets, stock, all kinds of stuff. Even a guy like Elon Musk, when he paid $40-something billion for Twitter, had to go figure out how to finance it, because even Elon does not have $40 billion in cash laying around. No. Now, I'm not saying Jeff Bezos couldn't come up with $6 billion, because he clearly could, but my point is that it's not just as easy saying, oh, the guy's net worth is $10 billion, he can afford $6 billion. That's not how any of this works. They all have to get loans. And doing commercial lending every single day of my life and my real job, I can tell you that it is a crisis right now, and closings of delaying even a month are a major problem because of interest rates and construction costs, which leads to stadium talk, by the way. So it is a serious problem. And so this column that was in Front Office Sports called "How the Federal Reserve is Impacting Washington
Sales."
Yeah, well, the C words, but the point is, it's way more serious when you're trying to finance like $4 billion. You know, 8% compared to even 4 or 5% is a lot of money. That's the point of the column.
Right. I mean, I think just for the average person, if you bought a house 10 years ago and rates were really low, they were probably around 4% then, and they got down to what, 2 or something, 2.5.
I hit mine at the exact right time a year ago, literally at the last month, and it was 2.3 or 4.
You and I both refied at that exact same time. I remember, and that was a great time.
And it's up to 8 now.
Yeah, I would not want to sell a house and try and buy a new house right now if you've got that.
It's not a good time. If you don't have to, don't.
Right, but I mean most of the people listening have probably bought a house or at least a car or some big purchase. Those points make a big difference in the end.
And so multiply that by a lot to get to 4, 5, 6 billion financed, and you're talking about a lot of money. And so that's probably part of why there's not as many bidders.
Right. You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars when you factor all the interest in.
And remember, these are 30-year loans probably too. So I mean, it's a butt ton of money you're talking about here.
Yeah, it is a lot of money.
That's the formal term, butt ton.
Right. That is Steve, a financial expert term. So you've got butt tons of money and Scrooge McDuck swimming pools of money. Those are what you should take away from this.
And so even like Harris, if he's worth, what is he worth, Dave? It was in your column. What is he worth?
He's worth 5.9.
Okay, so he's worth 5.9, and so the major assets would be the Philadelphia 76ers, and call that $1 billion maybe on a pot. Maybe probably not that much, but let's.
I think they were. I think they were just right around $2 billion. I think.
I don't think he did that much. Okay, fine. Give him the benefit of the doubt. Fine, give him the benefit of the doubt. And so he's got an ownership group of that, right? So he probably owns what, 50-60% maybe of that. And so say he's got $1 billion in that, and then he's got the New Jersey Devils. Let's call
so $500 million there.
Yeah, he's got another $500 million, and then he's got a bunch of other investments and stuff.
Right.
So he's certainly got a lot of cash, more than all of us, but. He's got to go figure out how to raise $2 billion, and he's obviously done that because he's submitted a valid bid that's been accepted.
Beforehand, I would be shocked if you hear a guy's net is that. I'd kind of be shocked if he has more than $100 million cash on hand.
I mean, I'm not going to put numbers to it, but he certainly doesn't have tons of cash laying around. It's not a good use.
Most people don't.
No.
Yeah.
And the Sixers are worth $3.15 billion.
Are they really? I would never have guessed that much.
Wow.
What's your source for that?
I got that off of Forbes, off the Forbes list.
Okay. Who knew? I didn't know it was that much.
Clubs. In fact, they are listed as apparently the number one I can't
That
be right.
doesn't
Golden
make
State
sense.
Warriors. No.
No, the Lakers would be 1.
They're number
Well,
10. They're ranked 10th.
The Lakers, the
They're-
Knicks, the
Yeah.
Celtics, those teams.
Actually, the Warriors. Golden State Warriors is $7 billion.
Are they
Number
really?
1. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, they've had a lot of success, and didn't they just build a new stadium a few years ago?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
point
so-
is, my point with this is Josh Harris's net worth is mostly tied up in businesses, and
Yeah.
that's where you get the net worth number from. Because
Yeah.
Forbes doesn't
Right.
have access to his bank account, by the way. They're not like
No.
peering into a savings account or anything.
Right.
They're adding up his business assets. That's
Yeah.
where
Right.
the number comes from.
And by the way, even Forbes is just guessing on a lot of the
Oh,
business
of course they are.
assets.
Of course they're guessing. Yeah.
I've heard not billionaires, but people who are supposedly millionaires talk about when they see what they claim their net worth it is, and they're all like, "It's nowhere close to this." I don't know where those numbers
we
come
don't do
from.
politics here, but
Yeah,
a certain guy named Arnold de Rumpte in Pig
Sure.
Latin has claimed for years that he's net worth is multiple billions and everything, and
right.
but that's just, he doesn't probably know either.
Right.
And I'm not
Right.
trying to get political. I'm just saying that's a guy who's saying he's worth multiple billions. Forbes is going to say another thing. The truth is, some were wrapped up in a bunch of naming rights deals on New York
Sure.
buildings, and what's that worth? And
Right.
that's
Sure.
it's just a guess.
Well, and I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole. There's a whole other rabbit hole of the people who are worth so much money that it doesn't even exist, like the Vladimir Putins, the Saudi royals.
Vladimir Putin's not a good example because he's basically the most wealthiest gangster that's ever lived.
So are the Saudi royals. That's my point.
Different kind of gangsters.
That's my point, Steve. They're worth so much money, but we can't even tell you what it is because it's all illegally gotten at some point. Yeah. So I just thought that was an interesting. If you've not thought of that perspective, go read that article. It's not in depth in any way, but it's just another interesting caveat in this whole discussion.
And I think where it comes down to is we all know that the Washington franchise is having trouble selling. And why? Well, it's a combination of factors.
Mhm.
One, Dan Snyder's being a dick.
Right.
Two, and he just is, and nobody likes him, and nobody wants to deal with him. Two, he's clearly overvalued his franchise.
Steve, you're on 3 because you said 1, he's being a dick. 2, no one likes him. So this is 3.
Okay, well, number 3, sorry. Number 3, he's overvaluing his franchise.
Yes.
And number 4, it's a horrible time to borrow a lot of money to buy assets. And so all those things are conspiring.
And then don't forget number 5, he's also just such a dick. I mean,
well, you're repeating my number 2 and number 3 apparently now. So.
Have we covered how much of a narcissistic douche he is too?
That would be number 6.
That's number
That
6.
would be number 6.
Yeah. And I hear he smells funny, so that's number 7.
And he's short.
Which, we should make
he's the crown prince of the lollipop guild. I mean, come on.
That's got to be a show title, Crown Prince of the Lollipop Guild.
Writing that down. All right.
Oh, and by the way, please, I ruined the line.
What?
Well, you always say, Steve.
I always say it.
Credential us.
Credential us. There you go.
Oh, yeah, please credential us.
I had the moment and I screwed it up.
That's fine.
Don't steal my lines.
So, one other thing that did come out this week that does relate to the sale, and it's just a minor thing, really, when you're talking about these numbers. The Commanders settled the lawsuit that was filed against them by the D.C. Attorney General. Just as a refresher, the city sued after some of the stories came out about the team withholding the fees.
It was a security deposit.
The security deposits, thank you, that fans had paid in the past. So the Commanders settled that deal with the city. They paid back $200,000 in security deposits that hadn't been returned, and they are agreeing to pay a $425,000 fine.
By the way, the $200,000 is nuisance value for a major corporation. So
Yeah.
it's this lawsuit. I read it a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was kind of a dumb lawsuit. It was I never understood how the district would ever think they could prove any of this and nail down who the people were or any of that. But clearly, it was enough of a threat where the C words just wanted to make it go away, so they cut a deal, and that's the end of it. And who knows how anybody's going to get that money, but it doesn't matter.
Well, yeah. The big thing to me is it's another thing you would do if you're trying to sell a team, though, is you would just settle this.
Oh, get rid of a liability for sure. Absolutely.
You have 400 lawsuits against you. Make it 399.
Well, you see in these on these things like sale agreements, you have to disclose all these things, and
right.
Like a little like like a gnat bite of a lawsuit like that, you don't want that hanging around. Just get rid of it.
Right.
That's the answer.
Right, because if you don't, it does bog down. Like, do you put money in escrow for this or anything?
Well, it also reduces the value of the asset,
right?
Because they're gonna, it's just say, hey, look, you have a liability, dude. We don't know what this is going to cost us, and that rate lowers the price. Because Dan Snyder, in case you've been living under a rock, does not like to settle things. He's vindictive, but in this case, it's in his best interest. So
right. I wish he would settle, the 40 other suits.
I guess he just had to give up some hookers and put the money.
That's a whole month's worth of his hooker money.
But please credential us.
Yes. All right, let's move on. Steve,
wait. Before you move on.
Sure.
So I watched one of Rick Snyder's little videos. By the way, Rick will no longer be with the Hogsty. We've parted company in good terms. He's a friend.
We're friends.
He's moving his whole operation to a paid area of YouTube is what's happening. Yeah. So if you want to watch his stuff, we're not going to talk about it anymore, but go there to Rick Snyder's Washington and pay whatever it is he's talking about wanting you to pay. So,
Rick's trying to retire, folks. This is what he's doing for a living.
Yeah, we weren't paying him any money. So, but we love Rick. No hard feelings. Yes. It's not my point is that he was talking I saw one of those videos this week, and he was talking about the impact of Jeff Bezos on RFK. I disagree with Rick. Rick's point was that Bezos might have had the best chance of getting the RFK site. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody has a good chance of getting the RFK site. People forget it's not just convincing the DC government. It's convincing the federal government.
Right.
Maybe Congress. It's owned by the federal government. It's leased for another 10 years or something to DC. Mm-hmm. And that means the federal government would have to agree to lease it in perpetuity, either sell it or a long-term 30, 40-year lease. Right. And they'd have to be motivated to do this in the middle of all these other things. I just think it's very unlikely that will, and throw in what Alex knows, which is none of the residents want a stadium there. Right. They've been talking about it for 15 years. They don't want a stadium there. So
the irony, of course, is they've been living there since the 60s with a stadium there. And
yeah, but they don't want. They want something else done with the property.
I know,
not the stadium.
But guess what? It's either going to be that or it's going to become jungle. That's
But my point is, I don't think Jeff Bezos has any more of a shot than anybody else. And Dave, you pointed something out very prescient in your column today about that. Is Bezos isn't really liked by anybody in terms of politics. He's not a conservative, so the GOP doesn't like him, and he's not truly like a inline Democrat really either.
No, he's actually more or less a left-leaning libertarian.
Kind of, He's not super plugged into either party. So he's a rich dude, but
and he gives donations to either side too.
Yeah, it's not like you can pick up the phone and call Mitch McConnell or Chuck Schumer, and they're just going to do his bidding.
Yeah.
No, I've said from the beginning, the only way you'll get that stadium, whoever buys a team, you make a phone call, you call McCarthy, you call Schumer, you call McConnell, and you call not Pelosi, the new guy, and you just say, "What bribe do you want?" And
don't use the B word.
Yeah.
But see, any billionaire is connected. Okay.
I know.
I mean, it's not like there's the invisible billionaires and Bezos is the only known billion. Just because you don't know his name, people out there, does not mean that doesn't have a ton of business connections.
The people who control politics, you don't know any of their names.
Right. They're all rich billionaire dudes who are contributing lots of money to these corrupt politicians.
Right.
Yep. In the form of PACs.
You might know a few.
Mostly.
You might know. Everyone's going to know Soros and the Koch brothers, but that's about it.
If you want to be nonpartisan, Soros is the wacky lefty. The Koch brothers are the wacky righties. Or give billions of dollars.
Right. The ones who really control things pay that much, and you don't know their names. Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't take
in the
Bezos
dark.
to build a stadium. I don't think Rick's right about that. I don't think they're going to get RFK no matter what, no matter who it is. They're not going to get RFK. I don't think.
No, I think Poplar. If anywhere in the city, Poplar Point might be their best bet.
Where is that?
Across the river from where Nats Park is now, in Acacia.
Where is that? Oh, Anacostia. Yeah, you and I have looked at that area
Yeah,
before. Yeah,
it's
okay.
smaller, but you could make it work.
Anyway, point is, I just want to say I don't think Rick is right. About that. I don't think it really matters.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to your article you wrote about Chase Young and what should Washington do regarding like the 5th-year option and just is he a bust or what? Like what's going on here, Steve?
Okay,
I'll leave it to you to thumbnail it, but
yeah, I wasn't intending to call him a bust necessarily. I don't think.
No, that's me. That's me.
No, I know. But I mean, it's a question. It's a valid question. He was drafted number 2 overall. He was a hero. People called him a generational talent, which made me want to put my head through a wall.
You hate that. You hate that.
Oh, I hate that term. Yeah, I really hated it. I hate it then, still hate it now. But where we are with him is he's entering his 4th year. Washington has until May 3rd to decide whether or not to place a 5th-year option on him. Right. If they miss it, then he just doesn't have the option. This is what they did to Deron Payne last year. And so what the column gets into, I'm trying to find some comparisons here. And so the first comparison is you've got James Smith-Williams sitting out there. Yep. He was a 7th-round pick in 2020. Now, there's no 5th-year option on him, okay? They'd have to re-sign him. But James Smith, here's some stats. I'm not going to play the guessing game here because, I mean, you guys know where I'm going with it. Chase Young, 27 games played, 26 starts, 75 tackles, 50 solo, 9 sacks. James Smith-Williams, 20 starts, 63 combined tackles, 6 sacks. It's a little less, but he's a lot cheaper than Chase.
Yeah, if you re-sign him, he's not gonna. He'll cost you less than $5 million.
Oh, great, absolutely will. And if you go back through Chase's history, he had certainly a quality rookie year. And if you compare his rookie year to, if you go back, you've got Jadeveon Clowney, who was drafted 1st overall in 2014. You got Mario Williams, 1st overall in 2006, both by the Texans, ironically. And Clowney got hurt immediately, but the next year he started 13 games, 40 tackles, 4.5 sacks. Mario Williams' first year, and Mario Williams ended up in multiple-time Pro Bowler, and Chase doesn't have any of that. 16 starts, 47 tackles, 4.5 sacks. So Chase's rookie year was comparable to or better than both of them, right? But since then, he skipped OTAs to go make commercials. He got hurt. The defense went on without him. They didn't seem to take a step back because of him alone. And then he came back at the end of the year and didn't do anything, of impactful whatsoever. So
he just signed a New Balance deal. I don't know if you saw that. That's his new impact.
Well,
he's
by
got
all means.
There we go.
Shoe deal with New Balance, the shoe of middle-aged white dudes.
I think this year it should be, if they ask me my opinion, which they won't.
Right.
This should be a prove-it year for him. Don't sign him to the 5th-year option. It's going to cost $17.5 million to do that.
Right.
And if he has a great year, try to sign him. And if not, let him move on. And make sure you sign James Smith-Williams.
Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think what we see this year is, they don't do the 5th-year option. I think that'd be a smart way to go. And this year they're going to decide: is it going to be Montez Sweat or Chase Young after this year? And because they already know, as you pointed out here, they could take a James Smith-Williams and they can rotate. They can get a handful of James Smith-Williams and rotate them on the other side. When you have the 2 tackles that we have, and then you have Montez Sweat on the other side or Chase Young on the other side. I mean, you don't need to have an elite level pass rusher on the other edge. You just don't need that. It's the same formula that the Eagles have done for years now. They threw someone in there with Fletcher Cox for years, and they have a Brandon Graham on the one side, and it's just a bunch of no-namers on the other side. But they were still effective.
Washington was doing that for years when they ran the 3-4. If you really think about it, it was you had Brian Orakpo, and then they
Kerrigan on the other side. Yeah.
Well, eventually they got Kerrigan on the other side, but the first couple of years they just drafted and signed random guys for cheap.
Yep.
And then when Kerrigan came in and Rakpo left, it was, hey, let's just spend a second round pick every other year on a defensive edge, and that way we never pay a guy.
Right.
Because it was, who was it? Murphy, then Smith and Anderson. I might be, but like every other year they drafted a new edge guy to just be the second or third rusher. It's a formula that a lot of teams have employed, I think, at this point.
And
the formula you have to, especially for as much you pay for quarterbacks these days.
Yeah,
you gotta do something.
And by the way, I mean, Montez Sweat is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
you got the same problem with him. He's been okay.
Yeah.
He's not been spectacular.
He's been healthier.
Right. He has been healthier. He didn't tear up his knee. And I don't fault Chase for tearing up his knee, but I fault him for not doing anything when he came back, for sure. But point is, neither one of them have really blown me away. But specifically with regard to Chase, I'm sorry, but I can't see giving him a 5th-year option right now, and I can't see giving him a long-term contract right now.
Not for what you probably would expect.
No.
I mean, look what the Lions got to do with Okudah. Now, Okudah hasn't really performed anything, but they just got them moving on from him and said going a 5th-year option for a 5th-round pick somewhere to Atlanta.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, yeah.
He just hasn't. I mean, I know he's a hometown hero and all that, but I mean, I don't think he's really lived up to it. Lived up to the hype. Even his rookie year, I mean, it was good. I didn't think he really blew me away as a rookie. The award notwithstanding.
There was a lot of stuff, if you watched how he played, that was very intriguing. He's like, he almost plays like a linebacker when it comes to the run game. He was very good at that, I thought. Like, getting his head on a swivel and just tracking the ball carrier. But truthfully, he's better at run stopping than he is at pass rushing at this point. And I'm sorry, you don't pay $20 million to a run stopper.
No. He reminds me a lot of LeVar Arrington in terms of, I mean, at different positions, don't get me wrong, but just in terms of how they came here, how they play, attitude. He really is kind of a younger version of Kerrigan, I think. Or not Kerrigan. Arrington.
Arrington, yeah.
The funny thing is, Arrington's best year, he basically played that defensive end linebacker hybrid role.
Only Washington hadn't screwed his contract up.
Yeah, right? and he hadn't wrecked his knee on that motorcycle accident.
Yeah, well, there was that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's what ended him, right? I mean,
among other things.
Sure. Sure. It's an interesting column that you wrote, and it is a problem that I think I'm sure they're thinking about it every day in Redskins Park.
Yeah, but also remember, I mean, we went through this with Daron Payne, and they didn't give Daron Payne a 5th-year option.
Right.
And he wasn't in the dissimilar space either. Daron was a guy who had some talent, looked good, didn't blow anybody away. And they made him prove it. And in Daron's case, he did.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, if I tell you to make me, or if I tell you prove it to me, that, like, if you fail, that's all the evidence I need that you don't belong on the team long term, right? I mean, like, that's a win-win for them.
It's not necessarily he doesn't belong. It's he doesn't belong at the amount of money it would cost to have you there.
And I can never understand how you would feel insulted because someone wants to give you a prove-it year and not pick up your 5th-year option. I'm not saying Chase said that, but I know you get that feeling from some people. Yeah. So it's like, I mean, just think of it sooner. You get your longer-term contract out 1 year earlier by proving it the next year anyway.
I mean, I
instead of riding out.
I kind of get it at some level. I mean, it's the team is saying you're not good enough right now for us to give you a long-term contract. So the trick is not that they said it. The key factor is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to whine about it? Are you going to man up? Daron Payne manned up. Some people don't.
And, the interesting thing was, remember that year before, Payne had that big blow up on the sideline with Josh Allen and all that stuff.
And they thought for sure Payne would probably be the odd man out on that one.
Right. But those two, I love having those two in the center as just like a duo of good defensive tackles.
I'll tell you what, in this day and age, the passing game, I I actually really think that having two tackles like that are probably more important than really having two dominant edge rushers, because if you give a quarterback too much time in that pocket and they can step up with the way that this passing game is, I mean, being able to collapse that pocket and force that quarterback, well, most quarterbacks out of that pocket and make them uncomfortable, that's the way to go.
Well,
That's what those two do.
And that is a part of this calculus, because Washington has committed long term to two guys that are going to be $15 million plus each already. They are not going to spend $15 million on Chase Young and $15 million on Montez Sweat, and
then you have Cam Curl, and then you have
Well, even but this defensive line group alone, you're not going to have that much money tied up in starters. They cannot afford to keep all four of those guys. Somebody's going to have to get cut, and it's down to Montez Sweat and Chase Young. One of those two guys is not going to be with the Washington Seawards.
Yep. And I would not be a bit surprised if one of them is moved on draft day.
It's not a crazy thought.
No, it's not.
And it kind of ties into what we're going to talk about in a little bit, maybe. If Washington really loves one of these quarterbacks, would it be so crazy for them to trade Chase Young to move up to grab a quarterback they like? I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying, is it that nuts to think that may happen?
No, it's not. It's not a crazy thing. If you really love a quarterback, you go after the quarterback, over an edge rusher that is on your team. That's for sure.
Yeah. And the other thing about Chase is, I always think it's good for these players to get away from home. I never think it's good for them to end up at their hometown team unless you're very special, like mentally, very tough, mentally tough person, because there's so many strap hangers, around you. There's so many people that want things. Sure. I don't know. I think it would be very hard to focus if you're right in your hometown, 5 minutes from mom and dad and all the kids you grew up with and all those things. If you go across the country, just bring your handful of 5 or 6 people with you, I would think that'd be much cleaner. And I mean, I can't speak to what Chase does in his off time, but I would think it would be very hard for him.
I think many players would agree.
There. We saw Josh Allen's made it work, but Jonathan Allen's made it work.
Yeah, but Jonathan Allen's playing with a full deck. He's a smart guy. He's a grounded guy, military background, remember, disciplined. He's not the norm. He's not. Some of these guys are from horrible, tough, but not Chase. Not that Chase is, but some of these guys are from terrible background.
Didn't he also grow up in an orphanage briefly, Allen, or something? Like there was some real hardship point.
I'm not sure of that. I'm not sure.
I need to double check that. I thought I remember seeing that.
I don't remember that. I don't want to leave that hanging. We're gonna
I'll look it up. I'll look it up. You guys keep talking.
Okay. Some of these guys are from difficult backgrounds, and their whole neighborhood expects them to get them out of bad straits and stuff. It's just very hard. And I know Chase is not from that. He's from a middle class background, so it appears.
Allen was in foster care briefly in his life when he was young.
Oh, okay.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And I was right. His father was, according to Wikipedia, a sergeant first class in the Army. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, Chase Young's father was a cop, I believe.
Chase Young's father, it says, Army Sergeant First Class Richard Allen Jr. won full custody of him and his brother in 2004.
Yeah, it's Allen. Yeah.
Are you talking about Chase Young?
I was saying I believe Chase Young's dad was a cop.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll look that up.
So what do you guys think? I mean, do you think that Washington should sign him? Give him? There's 3 options really. It's and I went over this in the column. It's offer him a long-term deal now, give him the 5th-year option now, or don't do anything. Just let him play and let him become a free agent.
Honestly, I just think we don't do the 5th-year option. I think we let him play out the year, and I think it really just comes down to, Montez and Chase Young. You guys are playing for the future on this team. The other one's out. But the only problem with that though is that if you do that, you lose value in terms of what you get in return if you just let them walk next year. Mm. That's why in the back of my mind, I almost have a slight gut feel that we might wind up seeing one of them moved when it comes draft time, because you want to get something you'll get more value for them right now and probably more value for Montez Sweat than Chase Young because he's still coming off that injury. If you do something right now, and then it gives you that option to move forward on what you want to do in terms of contract wise. But if it was my choice, I'd rather keep Montez Sweat over Chase Young because we saw that Chase Young it was very apparent that Chase Young was the one that was doing the freelancing and not playing within the scheme. Because when he was out and you had the rotation on the other side of Montez Sweat, that defense was playing very, very well.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you. I don't think any of us want them to take the 5th-year option. I would let the season play out and go from there. If you decide you want to sign them both or you want to sign one, you sign them. If not, you could walk away from both of them. You could tag and trade a guy. Like, let's say both of them have a great season and Chase Young's pouty because he's mad about the 5th-year option. This is just a hypothetical. We don't know if that would be the case, but you could do what the Ravens are trying to do with Lamar Jackson. You try and tag and trade him. There are other options.
Obviously. I mean, I don't think it's going to be successful with the defensive end.
Probably not, but you could try.
Yeah, the problem is you're stuck with it. Once you offer the tag, you're going to be stuck with it. Yeah. That's the problem. I mean, it's a fully guaranteed max value contract, so you're going to end up like even the Ravens don't want Lamar Jackson. They're going to end up being stuck with him. And I think they probably did it. They're probably convinced somebody was going to sign him. And now that, for a variety of reasons, that we're not going to get into, it's
that's a whole
subject, but we've also talked some about it. But I think they're gonna by accident end up having to pay him $30 million or whatever the number is.
Well, actually, I don't even think another team will even make an offer.
That's what I'm saying. The Ravens are going to end up with him by accident.
Well, no, I'm just talking about until after the first round of the draft this year. Then any teams that have interest might start throwing that offer out there because then you don't have to commit this year's first round pick. It's the next 2 years after that for the first round picks for compensation. And you can play with that. You can make that up in terms of picks, moving up and down the draft board. Even in this year's draft, you could do something in position for another second-round pick next year that you would lose, since you'll lose the first-round pick to get Lamar Jackson.
Sure, there's a lot of things you could do.
Could be,
yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, I just didn't see any logic in any team offering any contract to him until after that first round this year. To me, it makes no sense. It just makes sense on committing 24s and 25s year's first round pick as opposed to this year's, especially for a quarterback needy team that's drafted in the top 10. Just wait.
Well, it also depends on who's going to miss out on their guy. Some teams are going to miss out on their guy.
Right. Exactly.
So we're talking about quarterbacks. Why don't we just change the gears here? Steve, you have a column coming out, I believe, Friday, you said, right?
Probably Friday,
yeah. Probably Friday. You'll see our quarterback preview. And it's an interesting quarterback class this year with some good top-end talent, much better than last year in that regard. Well, last year was just a really bad draft class. Let's be honest.
We got the best of the group.
It's not great, but it's a step up.
Right.
This is always one of my favorite columns. Pieces.
You love writing about the quarterback class.
I do like writing about the quarterback, and I'm not totally done with it yet. I have one more day to finish this, but
who are you still working on?
I'm down to the dregs now. I'm down to I got to do Stetson Bennett. I got to do Clayton Tune, and I'll probably end it there.
All right.
So let's start at the top. This is my top, okay? So I'm going to read my rankings, and we'll talk about each player. So I've got C.J. Stroud number 1, Will Levis number 2, Anthony Richardson number 3, Bryce Young number 4, Hendon Hooker number 5. So let me explain. Bryce Young is too damn small, okay?
Yeah.
He's 5'10". He weighed 204 at the combine, which means he's really probably 190.
Yeah.
He was the Alabama had him listed as at 194.
Right. You bulk up usually for the combine.
Yeah, right. And he's just too small. I mean, he's got a lot of talent. Bryce does. He's got a quality arm. He looks good in the pocket. He can do a lot of things. but he's 5'10" in 194. And if you go back in the history of the NFL, you can count on one hand, literally, because I have done it, the number of quarterbacks who made it as solid career quarterbacks at that size. It's very unlikely. So I just got to downgrade him in that regard. And I had him as a day 3 prospect. Saying I don't think he's worth more than that, because I don't think he's going to make it in the NFL. I think he's going to go in the top 10. Somebody's going to draft him. Don't get me wrong.
He's probably going to go in the top 2.
Yeah, good. Yes.
Yeah, right.
But I personally wouldn't draft. I would throw a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick at him. And that's it. CJ Stroud.
What's crazy about Young is, I've seen a few of his games. It's just his arm talent can absolutely be insane with some of the off. I mean, he makes similar off-platform throws accurately.
He does.
That you see Mahomes do all the time. It's just, but he does it so naturally, even under pressure. He just does it so naturally. It's just a shame he couldn't be like a few more inches taller.
And it's not even like, I think Kyler Murray's too small too, and that's kind of proven true a little bit. But even Kyler Murray is bulkier.
Right.
Bryce Young is by football players' standards a toothpick. That's his problem.
I feel like Kyler Murray is also kind of known to be more of the mobile style quarterback than Bryce Young.
Yeah, that's not what Bryce really is.
Yeah.
Right.
So my number 1 is CJ Stroud, who's 6'3", 214.
Right.
I don't think he's the greatest
number one.
What's that?
He looks the part.
He looks the part. I don't necessarily think he's the greatest number 1 quarterback we've ever seen in the draft. He's got good but not outstanding arm strength. He's got great mechanics, can read the entire field. His problem, what I've noticed about him, is he doesn't always throw people open. A lot of times he will wait to have people come open before he throws, or sometimes he'll try to motion them, where he wants to and place them where he wants to. But what he's going to have to work on, the top quarterbacks, as everybody knows, NFL quarterbacks will throw people open, and I don't see him doing that. But I think that, to me, that was his only word. He's not really a runner. He's more of a pocket guy. He's going to scramble some. But I think he's clearly by far the number 1 quarterback in the class. He's going to probably go number 1 overall to Carolina, unless they really love Bryce Young.
Right.
In which case, then he'll go number 2 overall to the Texans.
Right. It's an interesting thing you point out as like a flaw. To me, that reminds me a lot of Dwayne Haskins, who also came out of Ohio State.
It reminded me a lot of Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah.
Right.
Similar issue when you have all 5-star talent receivers that can, usually just beat guys on speed, because that's what Ohio State does. And you just, all right, no, go there. I'm going to throw it there. You can, all right, you're good. Now I can throw it. Yeah.
Stroud is literally motioning people around the field sometimes.
Right.
Now the one stigma you always hear is Ohio State quarterbacks, which scare me.
Sure.
Ohio State quarterbacks just don't ever pan out. But the one intriguing thing with Stroud, and you saw a little bit with Haskins, is Ryan Day. Ryan Day runs a pro-style offense that's not just a one-read system.
Right.
Where Meyer, prior to that, it was a one-read, come back, one read, not open, you scramble out, do whatever, and most likely usually you're running downfield. There's not progressions in that offense. Ryan Day runs that type of system. Stroud very well could be that guy that kind of breaks that trend of Ohio State quarterbacks that just don't succeed. But as far as like throwing receivers open, I haven't watched him enough to know all that, but that's something that could be concerning at the next level, because if you can't throw a receiver open, you could run into a lot of problems with interceptions.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of a shade of gray a little bit. Okay. I mean, I'm giving you pluses and minuses because that's my job in writing this column. I do think he's the number 1 overall quarterback. I'm just saying I don't think he's great at that. I think that's an area that NFL coaching can have him improve. I'm not saying he can't. I'm not saying it's awful. He's my number 1 guy on the board. But I think that's an area that he can improve and become a better quarterback. And I think I always think these quarterbacks will be helped if they wait, if they sit on a bench for a while. But it's not going to. They're going to put him out there immediately.
If you're drafted 1 of 1, they just don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
It is a weird thing, the whole, because you guys know me. I'm not a superstitious person really, but like the whole like you can't draft Ohio State quarterbacks. They always don't like. I see it, and it's true. They always fail. It's amazing. But at the same time, I can't just be like, well, the school's cursed by a ghost or something. There's no logic to why every Ohio State quarterback hasn't worked out.
You could say the same thing about Alabama quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And I have a theory
Oh,
about
yeah.
this, like a legitimate theory about this. So I think a lot of times these quarterbacks succeed at places like Ohio State and Alabama because one, mostly that the talent around them is so good and their
Sure.
offensive lines are so good that it's not as challenging for them. And to be honest, these teams are playing chumps 7, 8
Right.
games a year.
They have 3 or 4
Yeah.
big games
They
every
do
year.
have 3 or 4 big games.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I think their talent level is so high around them. Whereas you put a guy at some, Iowa or somewhere, it's not the same.
Right.
So I think that's part of the thing. It's the team around Ohio State. There's a bunch of first round draft picks there every year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Yeah,
my
yeah.
theory.
You
about
at
it.
least have 3 weapons who are legitimate NFL
Yeah.
weapons
Right.
every year.
All right, so let's move on. Otherwise, we're never going to
Sure.
get through this list. So I've got Will Levis number 2, kind of by default. This is why I said I don't think this is a good quarterback class. Will Levis looks like he fell out of the quarterback factory. The guys who do things like, drool over the combine, love Will Levis.
Right.
Will Levis is a guy that the arrogant NFL coaches out there can look at and go, he's got all the tools, man. I can fix him. That's Will Levis, 6'4", 229 out of Kentucky. Look, here's his problem. He's a train wreck.
That's a heck of a problem.
He's got a cannon for an arm. Okay,
right.
Very strong arm, experience in a pro style offense. The size, 6'4". He's got the size. He's got it all. He's got the look, all of it. But he's inaccurate. His mechanics are inconsistent. He had a lot of interceptions, and a lot of those are his fault. He's got a lot of work to do to be a quality NFL quarterback. You cannot just rely on arm strength. Otherwise,
Right.
Jeff George would be in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
And so that is a problem. If it were me, I would look at him as a second round draft pick. He won't until going to round 1.
Right.
But for me, I think if teams are being honest with themselves, they would go, this guy's got too many problems to draft him high in round 1. So I think that's the criticism of Will Levis, and I saw that in his film. He's a mess, when it comes to everything that's not just like arm strength and size and athleticism.
It really is, and you've mentioned this now a few times. The overvaluing of the quarterback just completely messes up draft boards in a way. It's become such an overvalued position that I think if they had not done what they did with the NFL, these guys going later, it would have been better for the game. It really would. But anyway, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
Well, I got 2 names for you: Zach Wilson and Blaine Gabbert.
Yeah.
Guys that came into the combine showed this magnificent looking arm. Looks like he can make every throw, strong arm, can get it downfield, everything.
See,
And
Zach
so
Wilson threw me off because his numbers were pretty good in terms of accuracy.
I did like Zach Wilson, and he also went to the Jets. Remember?
That's true.
Right. But the
Which
problem
is where
with Zach
quarterback
Wilson,
careers go to die.
but the problem with Zach Wilson was it was mostly his mentality
Sure.
towards the game and how he was on the field. When he made a bad play, it was done. It was over. And he could never get past that. He could never get through that. But when he had a really good game, he had a great game. But it's just, and before the combine, if I recall correctly, Zach Wilson wasn't even projected in the top 15. It wasn't until the combine he ran all the way off the board. It was like the number 2 quarterback off the board.
Yeah. So So let's move on because we're running out of time.
Yeah.
We're only on the 3rd quarterback here. So that's Levis. I think he's got a ton of problems. If I were a Washington fan, I would draft him at some point. I don't know. I wouldn't draft him at 16. That's just my opinion.
Right.
Okay. So Anthony Richardson. Now, most people have Anthony Richardson rated over Levis. I do not. And if I can use one of my famous analogies, I called Will Levis a train wreck. So I watched a show over the weekend called Fire Country. If anybody's seen this on CBS, this is a show about firefighters out in the middle of nowhere in California somewhere.
Okay.
This particular episode I watched, there was a train wreck. And that train wreck, a van with a bunch of kids on it stalled on a train track, and the train ran into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a train wreck, and it's tragic. That's Will Levis. Anthony Richardson is the train that just derailed in Ohio and burned entire
and
town
has a 1,000 square mile or square foot, can't get around it anymore. Yeah.
That's Anthony Richardson.
Right.
So Anthony Richardson is another guy who looks like he fell out of the quarterback factory, 6'4", 244. He's got one of the strongest arms you're ever going to see. I mean, he's got an unbelievably strong arm. He's
freakish
got
speed. Yeah.
He ran a 4.4, 4.43 at the combine. Standing the vertical leap 40 inches, which is you're getting into like NBA guard territory with that.
Right.
He's a absolutely freak of nature athlete. But all of that, what that's caused him is to have very bad mechanics because his arm is so good. He's gone his entire life not having any other mechanics. His footwork is atrocious. I mean, just absolutely atrocious. Like you and I getting out there throwing footballs around level atrocious. I mean, his footwork is a disaster. He throws off balance all the time. He holds the ball way too long because he's trying to make stuff happen with athleticism. He just looks and acts awkward in the pocket. Doesn't do well under pressure at all. Like Georgia made him look bad, man. And they really did. And so he's another guy. You look at him, got these coaches. Man, he great arm. Look how big he is, athletic. I can coach him up. That's what's going to happen to him. I think after all that, I think he's a 3rd round pick, but he will go in the 1st round.
Yeah, he has the makeup of an elite tight end. Like the speed, the size. That is, think of the best tight ends you've ever seen play. That's who he is.
I think so.
And they're going to try and have him play quarterback.
But the problem is he's got such a strong arm that they're going to let him try it.
Yeah, I got it. They did it with Tim Tebow too. How'd that work out?
Yeah, not well.
Yeah, I think the biggest disservice to him is a team's going to draft him early in the 1st round. And if he can go into a Jordan Love situation and sit behind a good quarterback for a few years, mechanics can be fixed, and
somewhat, yes.
Sure. But it needs time.
Yeah.
But he's not going to get that time. He'll be washed out, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think so.
I think he has all the raw talents.
Maybe he falls in an exact right situation. Somebody can fix him. I mean, it's possible, but I just think it's highly unlikely. I just think the guys that are making it in the NFL have good fundamentals.
Sure.
And this guy's fundamentals are absolute disaster.
We've seen this with Lamar and Justin Fields, two guys who are freak athletes playing quarterback. You can
Lamar had much better fundamentals than Richardson.
Oh, yeah, no question. Both of them do, I think.
Yeah.
But you are seeing coaches willing to redesign offenses to fit a quarterback like this, who can be he's a second running back. Coaches do that now. I don't necessarily love it as if I were a general manager, it wouldn't be my go-to plan, but we've seen it before now, a few times.
Well, look at Josh Allen in Buffalo.
Sure.
I mean, his mechanics still isn't all that great, but they built that offense to put him in the best position to succeed for that offense. That offense is designed around his skill set.
Yeah, it is. Josh Allen is not a great passer.
No.
Now, would you say he's a better passer than Richardson when he was coming out, at least? Yeah.
Well,
when he was coming out.
I thought his footwork was better than Richardson's. Josh Allen just couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Right. That was his problem. Right. He just wasn't accurate at all. But yeah, I would have put Allen's mechanics over Richardson. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. I already talked about Bryce Young. I put him 4th only because of his size. He's got a lot of talent, but
he's got the right talent.
I just went. He might be. He has at least as much talent as Stroud. It's just his size. Okay, so Hendon Hooker, and this is a guy that apparently Washington interviewed. Hendon Hooker.
They've been sniffing around him a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, 6'3", 217 out of Tennessee. Hooker's problem is that he's coming off an ACL tear. So he's not in the ACL tear was on November 19th. And so the odds of him being ready to go day one, probably not good. But he's got decent stats, 67% completion percentage, in college. Only 12 interceptions on 80 touchdowns is a good ratio. I thought he had a very quick release. Very quick release. Good mechanics. Footwork was good. Strong arm. His problem to me was one, he doesn't read the field. He doesn't always read the whole field. A lot of times he just zings the ball out there to his first option. It's not a lot. He actually scans the entire field. And part of it is he's running an offense. It's not a pro style offense. And so, that's going to hurt him. His accuracy went down a lot going deep. And he had a real like RG3 thing going when he was sliding too on scrambles. Yeah. He looked like kind of a mess there too. So he's got negatives, but I think he's a guy. This guy I would draft in round 2, even with the injury, because you can afford to let him sit. He needs to sit. He needs to learn and fix some of these problems. But as a second round pick with knee injury, he basically has a free red shirt.
The injury
here.
Has to heal. Yep. The catch with him also is his age. He is 25 years old.
Yeah, I didn't mention that. He's a little older, yeah.
Yeah. He's,
a lot of these guys are older, actually, this year.
Yeah. I always forget how often guys come out in the draft and they're 23, 24 years old. It's just weird to me because I think you graduate college at like 21 because that's what I did. So,
Well, these guys are like redshirting and transferring. And
Hooker spent 4 years at Tech and then 2 at Tennessee. So, he's been college forever.
Yeah.
A lot of people go to college for 6 years.
There's a number of these guys that have done that. He's not the only one.
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry, Dave. Did you say what you want to say about him? I'm sorry. I've been trying to.
I just think Hooker. I think he's going to wind up probably in the best situation of all these quarterbacks, in terms of he's going to have that opportunity to be able to sit. He's going to have that opportunity to learn, and he'll probably end up going to a team somewhere even with a Tannehill, or even if he's there for Washington in the second round, he'll be behind Sam Howell, but most importantly, behind Jacoby Brissett, who he can learn a ton off of Brissett. And with Brissett being here, you don't have to worry about a Hooker being rushed in there, because if Howell doesn't pan out, Brissett takes over anyways.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, if Dan Snyder gets desperate enough, you might have to worry about a Hooker being run in on an emergency.
Yeah.
Well, if Dan Snyder doesn't sell the team, he probably forces them to move up to number 1 overall to take Hooker.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean,
he thinks the name's funny.
He may have to draft a Hooker. He may have to get even a day 2 Hooker in there.
Well, he spent $600,000 on a lawsuit. He's only on day 2 hookers now.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so next one, we'll go through the rest of these quicker. I've got Aiden O'Connell from Purdue. He's another guy. He's 24 years old, 6-year senior. Another guy, decent stats, 66.7% completion percentage, 65 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, a decent amount of interceptions in this case. I thought he was decisive, not afraid to try to throw into tight windows, played in a pro-style offense, but it was the same decisiveness that also got him in trouble, because he didn't always read the field. He was willing to go somewhere, but he was also throwing into pockets that he didn't have the arm strength to get the ball into, and it results in a lot of plays that in the NFL would have been intercepted even more. So I don't think he's a starter. I think I think we're skipping all the way down to day 3 with the rest of these guys. I don't think there's a lot in between,
right?
With these guys. But I think he's the best of kind of the second tier bunch, probably. So that is Aiden O'Connell. Jaron Hall. Now we're getting down into the dregs here. Back of the draft. Jaron Hall, 6 foot 207 from BYU. Size exactly like Taylor Heineke. Undersized, no arm strength, but he does have some athleticism. He can run through some reads, and so that part is good. But at this point, you're talking project, okay?
Right. Another guy who's older too.
Yeah, he's another guy that the scouts seem to like. So I think he may go a little higher than I had him. I think he'll probably be around 5-ish. Jake Hayner from Fresno State, 6 foot 207, again, same size. 72% completion percentage last year. First team All Mountain West. Good mechanics, average arm. His problem, one, he's playing at Fresno State. Staring down receivers, inaccurate deep, no arm strength at all, career backup. And then you're getting into guys like Stetson Bennett, who I haven't watched this film yet, but I don't think Stetson's going to be a starter. And there's a couple others. So that's the
McKee
nutshell.
is another one I think people mention a lot, at least. Yeah.
So there you go. That's quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Any thoughts from you guys?
Well, I could see Stetson Bennett being a guy that we could look at almost where Hal was at right there if he's available.
5th roundish, sure.
Yeah, 5th round.
I don't know if he's even at Hal's level though.
Oh, talent-wise, probably not.
Yeah, and he doesn't have an arm. Like Hal's got a strong arm.
Yeah,
sure. Also, I just feel like that kind of name, Stetson Bennett, he belongs in like Texas. That's a cowboy name if I ever heard one, right?
I don't think the Texans are going to draft him.
Did you guys actually listen to the interview that John Keim had with I forget the guy's name? He was talking. He covered Sam Howell in North Carolina.
I did not.
He was talking. Because he was talking about him in terms of the kind of quarterback he was, and where he projected him and everything. He actually believes that what he's getting into right now, because of the pieces around him, with the biggest wild card being tight end, of course, that he has what he needs to succeed, and he could see him being a pretty good quarterback as a starter, as a starting option for Washington going forward.
I mean, look, I think that's true about a lot of every quarterback. If you're in a good situation, it's going to help pay dividends. In terms of this group, though, since we are trying to talk about, they should draft somebody. I don't think there's a question of should. You
should draft a quarterback every year, to be honest. Just like a running back.
I'm fine with that kind of mentality. Until you've got a guy, just keep looking for a guy.
Bill Belichick tended to do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he did it while he had Tom Brady. That was the only guy from the top guys that top 5. I think they should consider as Hooker in the 2nd round if he's there. I would. If
for some weird reason C.J. Stroud fell to a place where they could trade up to draft him without giving away the farm, I might do that, and that's where like a Chase Young kind of trade maybe come in.
Right. But that's going to be Chase and multiple picks.
I don't think it's even a discussion because I think Carolina's going to draft him.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the top 3 quarterbacks will be gone by the 5th pick.
And you don't want Levis or Richardson in round 1, especially Richardson. If I had to pick, I rated Levis over Richardson because I think he's less of a train wreck, as I said. But neither one of them need to be starting next year, and you have to start a first rounder. So.
No, I don't think they should draft anybody in the first round where they're going to be. I like Hooker a lot. I think he's got a lot going for him. I wouldn't mind somebody in the 5th round again. That's fine. If it's Tanner McKee, if it's Stetson Bennett, sure, take a flyer on a guy. Why not?
Yeah.
I would be curious if they went for somebody a little more like on the athletic side, because there are a lot of pretty good athlete style quarterbacks in this draft. I feel
a bunch of small guys in this draft.
There are a bunch of small guys too. There's been a lot of smaller guys coming out at quarterback the last 3 years. Have you noticed that trend? There's been a lot more guys in like the 6'1" range than
there are a lot of them. Yeah. I don't know why that is necessarily, but there are.
Probably because the style of the offense we're going into right now.
Yeah, everyone's playing spread, so it doesn't matter as much if you're tall.
Yep.
Yeah. It doesn't help the NFL. But that's exactly what it is.
That's neither here nor there.
Nope. Not for college.
That's quarterbacks, kids.
Yeah, that's quarterbacks. All right, so we are over. We didn't really get to talk about YouTubeTV. We should do that really quick, though. So just because it's a big story for any fan.
Okay.
DirecTV's out. We all knew that was coming. NFL made their decision this week. It's YouTube who is going to be live streaming all the games on the Sunday Ticket kind of platform. So obviously you'll be able to get it online. You'll be able to get it anywhere because of that. The interesting thing is the price point. Now, Dave, I don't know. Do you have Sunday Ticket? Did you ever have Sunday Ticket?
I had Sunday Ticket. It was
Okay.
pretty pricey, but the
Yeah.
one thing I will say though, real quick though, is yes, it's a little bit more through YouTube TV, but what you save, because we switched from cable to YouTube TV, you can
Mhm.
save anywhere from like 60 to an upwards of over $120, which we were up on that end, depending
Right.
upon what your
Right.
cable system, so all the boxes, all that stuff.
Right.
But
If you're going YouTube TV over cable, yeah, you
right.
do save a lot there.
So the difference you make, you're actually still saving a little bit more money overall in the whole
Right.
package.
Right. So just to put the numbers out there, if you don't have YouTube as your streaming for like cable replacement, which most people probably don't, it's going to be $449 for non-subscribers per season for just Sunday Ticket. If you order it within like the next 2 months before June, it's $100 off. I know that that's like a promo they're running. If you are like Dave and you have YouTube TV, $349. So you save another $100 there too, which that's a pretty, good savings.
I think it's laughable to think that to expect people to spend $450 on this. There's no way in God's green earth I would do that.
Well, I think they price it like that because they want people to start thinking, well, would it be cheaper for me to give up my cable and go to YouTube TV and do this in the long run? When people look at that, and they're
Yeah.
going to see how much they could actually save by just switching to YouTube TV without getting the Sunday
I
Ticket.
have cable and it's not. I'm just not doing it, and that's period.
Well, that's fine. Yeah.
Well, I mean, at some point you're not going to have a choice.
No, there's always going to be people who don't know what they're talking about. It's what there won't be is necessarily a box with a wire connected to the wall, but there will be providers, including Xfinity and Time Warner, offering you packages to deliver content to your house. That's cable TV in a nutshell.
So that's what YouTube TV is. We're already there, Steve. That's my point.
Well, no, there are cable providers around the country.
Sure.
I am a subscriber to one of them.
Sure. I understand that. See, Steve, I understand the actual technical differences between what they are, and you're looking at it more as the consumer. I'm telling you, the technical thing is already here. We're done. We're done with.
Telling you, nobody
there's
cares
a
about any
cable
of that.
coming in your house and that's the only way it's going to come in.
I don't care whatsoever about that.
Yeah,
nobody does.
That's where the expense comes in. That's why.
But I'm not paying that much more for what I'm getting.
I mean, what does YouTube TV run you, Dave?
The basic package for YouTube TV, because we still have Comcast, the 1 gig, which is like for internet, which is like $80 for that, and then YouTube TV basic package, because that's all we have. Actually, no, I'm sorry, my wife did upgrade to sports package because of the Red Zone, and that's like another $74.
Right, and Red Zone is now included in this too, which is the other.
Yes, if you get that one, yes.
Yeah, so that's 120.
So, I mean, I've been over this on IJB before. I mean, I have a package that includes Wi-Fi, the home phone, cable TV. It includes Netflix for free. It includes Peacock for free, and a whole slew of on-demand stuff. So it's not the price point isn't comparable because my Wi-Fi is in there and my phone is in there and all that.
That part of the packaging is still involved. What's going to eventually happen is YouTube or Amazon's going to start buying out the network providers as well, and that's when they'll start doing those bundles with YouTube TV.
But to end this, because we're way over time at this point, YouTube is doing this. You have to pay a small truckload to get it if you're a YouTube TV member, and a much larger truckload if you're not. I will pass.
DirecTV was not that much different, I think, for Sunday Ticket. I think it was $300 or so.
I tried to subscribe to Sunday Ticket on DirecTV, and I was told by DirecTV that I did not live in an area where they were willing to provide it to me, which I thought was a horrible business model on their part.
Yeah, that's what.
How long ago was that?
It was the beginning of this past season.
That's odd because I work with a guy who does DirecTV all streaming wise. Doesn't even do it through satellite, and he was able to get DirecTV that way.
They will only do that,
I
Dave,
just
if you're in an
wanted
apartment.
Sunday Ticket. I
What's
just
that?
wanted the streaming package of Sunday Ticket, and they would not give it to me. They would not sell it to me.
Yeah, Dave, they only do the streaming package if you're in an apartment where you can't put a satellite dish up.
Yeah, that was their, they said, that's what they said, which is stupid beyond all comprehension.
Terrible business model that they had.
Interesting.
They lost out on my $100 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah. Yep. All right, guys, that should wrap us up for this week's episode. Like I said, Steve said we're way over time. So we'll see you all next week.
All right, fellas.
That complains about time, Alex.
All right, later.
Later.